news. Yeah. We have 20 students, 19 like him, 1 complains. That one to complain, that's the real stuff. Which, by the way, to bring that point up, if you have an issue with me or anything I say or anything that I do, because I do just speak whatever it is that I'm thinking, and you may say, well, that's maybe not the best essential way to be in the world, but I value truth and integrity and honesty, so I try to communicate in an honest and open sort of way. It might do something that offends you, and you're like, wow, you terrible, terrible man. Come tell me, right? Because otherwise I don't know what I did that offended you, or I can't explain myself. There's something called the principle of charity. The principle of charity says that if someone does something that makes you angry, assume the most charitable interpretations say, could it be that person really didn't want to anger me, but maybe they meant something else instead, and try to clarify that? The exception to this is what's known as the fighting words doctrine, and that says if someone says something that is so hurtful and so harmful by its very utterance, as if they punched you, then you can't give that a charitable interpretation, right? I can't call someone a fat slob and have a nice way to mean that. Like, oh, fat slob! Like, there's no nice way to say that. But if I say something else and it's like, you're like, oh, that offends me, assume that I didn't mean to offend you, and then get clarification on that. If my clarification is not accurate, or you don't feel that I've addressed your issue, then go to your desk and say, look, this guy's a jerk. I hate him. And then they'll send me an angry email, demand an apology, and then I'll say, you know what, the student did come to me and I didn't handle it very well, and I'm an adult. As an adult, I try to resolve my issues like an adult. So I failed. And then I'll be okay with it. But yeah, if immediately you just run and tattletale, like, I don't know, that just seems low. But I digress. That's your moral lecture. Assume the principle of charity. Right? Whenever you're driving, anyone who drives slower than you is what? They're an idiot. Anyone who drives faster than you, what are they? Maniac or asshole, right? Well, that's violating the principle of charity, right? Maybe that person has a really important meeting. Maybe that person's brakes don't work so well, so they're going slow. But our assumption is that if someone does something we don't like, there must be some deep, serious flaw with them as people. And that's probably not true. Most people probably sin out of ignorance rather than malice, right? They probably aren't aware they're doing something wrong. It's more likely that they're ignorant of it. If you go too far with this, you go to Socrates. Socrates said, no man sins out of malice, only from ignorance. Because if you have the choice between the right and the wrong, why would you choose the wrong? And that is why he was murdered by Athenian citizens. Because that's how a very logical person thinks. And that is not how the real world works. But yes, it was later St. Augustine who said that no, sometimes people do choose evil for the sake of evil, and he used the issue of a pear tree that are peach. I don't remember my City of God that well, okay? A long time ago. But anyway, in the City of God, he basically says that he went to a farmer's orchard, and he saw a peach tree, and he was like, you know, I'm going to eat that peach tree, not because I'm actually hungry, but because I know that's wrong, and I feel like doing wrong. I want to do the wrong thing for the sake of the wrong thing. And St. Augustine said, that is evil. If you choose to do the wrong because you know it's wrong. And that's pretty rare. Usually whenever people do things that are wrong, they do it like cockroaches, they hide in the shadow. Right? They go to write subforums and spam people, right? Or send forth their death threats. They don't do it like publicly as like me. They don't go like, you know what, I'm going to send you a death threat. Here, watch me write it. Right? You do it anonymously. So anyway.
So Thursdays is the study session program. On Friday, you're going to have a study session for psychology. I'll go to that too. Yeah, you're laying on the ground.
And now. But anyway, so ELT, that is a function which takes as the first argument integer, and then it takes a periodic range of text. So you can pass it as many text arguments as you want. They must be text, though, or it will fail, because it will not try to convert something to text for you. And then you can say like what you want out of it. So in this case, I'm saying at position 2, so 1 is 25, 2 is 13 times 847, which of course I don't know off the top of my head. But when I run it, you can see it gives me 11,011. If I choose 3, however, and this is not native, this is something you have to go make purposefully. But you can see the SQL files that will give you that ability. But anyway, select the LT with a value of 3, 1, 2, 3. It should be that date right here with the interval of 5 days. So it'll be 2020 of 25. Sure enough, that's it. Oh, what did I copy paste? Sometimes I copy paste. All right. So here's a little note there. Postgres requires a lot of type conversions, as the B could be car, var car, or text. Okay. So in this statement right here, I'm saying with T as. The with statement says, I want to select something before I intend to use it. So basically, do this operation first, the with statement. Then anything underneath that, do that second. The reason why I need to do that is because I need this new type to exist. It doesn't exist yet. So I have to create it right here. So with TS, select B, and I'm saying to convert that into text because there's three possibilities here. It could be a car, a bar car, or text. And so Postgres is going to say that's an indeterminate type, and it'll throw an error to remove that. I think that's how so when I make it a text, then in case when t.newType equals A, then first, when t.newType equals B, then second, else nothing, end. So since it's B, I'm expecting to see second as the argument that gets chosen there. And of course, that is correct. Sadly, I don't know how to zoom in on this thing, unfortunately. So make sure you're running these along if you have them, or that you can actually see what I'm typing. Otherwise, this will be kind of difficult. If you run in the functions, there will be a create ELT function. And if you run that, it'll actually give you that ability. Same statement, but this time inside of my selector there, I've got A as text as new type. So case when t.newType, T is the alias from this. So with T, and then inside here, I call that new type. So select that new type A, and if that's first, or if it's A rather than make it first. Sure enough, it is. So if I want to select two tables, and I want to say, whenever it's this value from the table, do this. That's how we go about doing that. And here we have one that doesn't match. So as you would expect on an unmatched statement, the else condition applies. So it's going to hit that else, and it's going to do the nothing. Now here's something that you will spend way too much time in your life doing. You can close the door if you avoid the hallway back chatter. Are we allowed to close the doors? I was worried there for a second. I was like, uh-oh. So there is an entire study called nullology, the study of nothingness. Truly the most depressing form of mathematics you can ever do. It's nothingness, right? So we're going to study the nothingness. We're going to gaze into the void and hope that it doesn't gaze back into us. We call niche philosophy class. So how do we deal with null? Well, there's a special statement called coalesce. And coalesce tries to determine if something is null. If something is in fact null, coalesce will then execute the second argument. So if I don't pass anything in there, so I just select coalesce null. I run that, I just get null. If I select coalesce 1, it gives me 1. If, however, I do the second version where it says if this is null, then use the default value. So this is how in SQL I can make sure that a value exists, and if not, I can get some sort of default value. We'll see a use case for that in a couple of statements.
Is there a way to encapsulate that?
Yes. All right. When we ask the question, is null null? You really hope that this is going to be true. And it is. Where is my favorite language in the world? This is JavaScript. Nan means not a number. So I said, is not a number, and this is a number. It's false. That's not a true statement. Then I said, what type of thing is not a number? And it said, it's a number. JavaScript was developed in 10 days. Not only was it developed in 10 days, it was developed in 10 days while the person who wrote it also had to write the interpreter for it. So we had to both write a programming language and an interpreter for the programming language. So all things considered, pretty good language for 10 days out. And it was ruined by Microsoft. So This gets back to our history. We talked about it briefly, but I will go off on this tangent. We'll circle back. Don't worry. But anyway, so Netscape and Sun Microsystems were two Silicon-based companies, and they said, we want to liberate the world from Microsoft. Microsoft is this evil tyrant king. We want to free the world. And they said, hurrah. And they joined together. They collaborated. It was Wonder Twins Activate. So they met, and Sun was working on Java, the programming language that runs JetBrains. Their IDE is all written in Java. So it's cross-platform and compilable. And they said, we're going to write it once and run anywhere. Netscape ran Netscape browser. And they were the leaders of the internet at the time. Microsoft thought that the internet was going to be was some passing fad. It was some stupid kid's toy, and the world was going to be run by faxes. Yes. Microsoft has a wonderful track record for knowing new technologies and when to jump on it, like Windows Phone and Zoom, right? They are just Bing also. After Google Chrome has owned the internet for decades, let's try to jump in that field. Of course, we all use Bing today. Anyway, so Microsoft got very upset when it heard that two Silicon Valley companies were teaming up and they were going to take out Microsoft. Well, Java has to be compiled in order to run. The result of that is that if you were going to have an interactive version of Java, you would constantly need to have a compiler running in the background compiling the code. So Brendan Eich, who was a developer at Netscape at the time, later on he moved to Firefox and runs his own company, he's the inventor of JavaScript, he ran a performance test on running the Java compiler inside of a browser. My God, this is not going to work. It's going to take them 5 seconds to do a very simple click operation, and it was just astronomical to do anything that was really heavy. Also, he had another problem with Java. If you ever go learn Java, it is a programming language for programming experts. It's strongly typed. It has lots of very specific syntax that you must follow. It will penalize you heavily. You must know what you're doing to write Java. And he said, no one's going to want to learn Java just to do some very basic browser stuff. Next problem you have. So in secret, not even like as an official project, he cooked up a language. And he wrote a compiler for it, the first version of LiveScript to run it. And he made 3 assumptions on it. So you have 10 days to build a brand new programming language. Most programming languages take about a decade to write. So you've got 10 days to do what normally takes 10 years. Oh man, does your life suck. Also, he's like 24, so not exactly an old, wizened, experienced person. So, okay, you got 10 days, you got to write an interpreter, and you got to write a programming language. Good luck with that. So he took 3 cues. He said, first, at the time, AppleScript was very popular, and he said, well, it's pretty easy to use. Then there was another language called Schema, rather, I think. It's still around. You can go look it up. It's pretty obscure. And it's based upon Lisp. And Lisp is the language that never dies. Every so often, Lisp gets re-resurrected as like the language we're all going to learn. Because as soon as you try to learn Lisp, you're like, oh, this is awful. But it solves a lot of computer programming problems for expert programmers, particularly dealing with things like mutable side effects and geometry. But it is based upon heavy abstract mathematics that no one actually wants to go learn. Because how many of you in your free time learn abstract mathematical formulas? Yeah, every day. That's the reason why I'm in this class, right? I learned 1 + 3 = 4 today. I asked my SQL engine, though. I couldn't do it in my head. So he did that. And then finally, he used a language that didn't even exist at the time. It was just a theoretical language. But he took pieces of that and he put it into it. So take 3 completely different languages, blend them all together. You got 10 days to make it work. You got JavaScript. And he called it LiveScript, which would have been a great name because then there would have been a confusion avoided. So then he demonstrated this. It's much faster than Java. So everyone at Netscape was like, yay, our hero. But the Sun Microsystems people were like, you're not using our beautiful language? That we told the world, that was their big promise, it's going to be the write once, run everywhere language. Like once you have Java, there will never be another programming language. In philosophy, Hegel claimed that everyone who ever did philosophy after him notes to his work. And he made the claim that God did not know itself until Hegel had written his book. Hegel was wrong. So if you're ever going to make a grand sweeping claim like that, be aware that history is not on your side. He also declared the end of history, and that, there will never be another question about what sort of government people should have. All the world's problems have been solved. we were just going to be writing footnotes to it. You can see he was a very accurate predictor of the future. Anyway, back to JavaScript. So they got together, they had this fight. And so someone at the board had to have said, we'll call it JavaScript, and no one will know the difference. And then there must have been like, brilliant, right? So that's what they did. And Netscape was a horribly managed company, as I've said. Again, 10 days on your own time to write a program that's going to run the entire company. That's a terribly managed company right there. Like, oh my goodness, right? But they had a web browser, which no one else had at the time. No one else really had at the time. So then Microsoft said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy out, because Microsoft doesn't invent anything, they just buy out other companies. So we're going to buy out this company called Spyglass. It became Internet Explorer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take Netscape with the new interpreter and we're going to reverse engineer it. And one thing on Microsoft, on the plus side, is their technical competency is through the roof. And they did this. They actually went through, reverse engineered it, and perfectly documented every bug, every edge case, every nonsensical statement, everything wrong with JavaScript, they nailed perfectly, absolutely to the letter. Got everything that's wrong about JavaScript and wrote a paper on it and perfectly reproduced it. If you know Microsoft, that's amazing, because Microsoft likes to make things Microsoft-y, and that is they take something, they halfway figure it out, and then they add their own pieces to it and call it finished. But here they replicate every single bug. So Netscape then went to the W3C, and they said, we have a new programming language. W3C hated it. Hated them with a passion. The committee was like waiting in glee, stroking a Persian cat, waiting for the day they could tell Netscape, go away. You're not good enough for us. That's literally exactly what happened. So then they went to the ISO, the International Standards Organization. ISO, guess what? Stroking a Persian cat. Waiting for the day they could tell this hated company, go away. So they did. They said, we don't want to hear about your stupid way. So then a company from Silicon Valley, California flies out to Europe, to the ECMAScript committee. If you look at its European committee materials, it's like an electrical organization. That's what ECMAScript is. But anyway, they go to the ECMA and they said, hey, Europe, will you let us propose our standard to you? And Microsoft, having the money, flew out to Europe at the same time as Netscape. And Netscape said, here's all the things wrong with our language. Here's how we're going to fix them. And Microsoft said, no, 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 no. Here's everything wrong with the language, and we want it just like this. This is the standard. They handed it over to ECMAScript and bribed them. And so ECMAScript said, okay, you bribed us, so we're going to make JavaScript the worst language of all time. Thus, we get JavaScript. So Microsoft, once again, ruined everything. And their whole point of it was they didn't think the internet was ever going to be a thing, but ironically, the internet has outlasted everything else, right? It's very, very popular. So now this terrible language that no one wanted to use, that was invented in 10 days, is the de facto standard for the entire web. And so the problems, and the reason why there's so many workflows when it gets to the JavaScript portion is entirely dealing with this problem of like the worst written language of all time is a language that everything's based on. And so now you have type of name that equals number, and no one knows why. But that's why. So Microsoft deliberately sabotaged it because they thought they were going to win that. And then ironically, the open internet beat out Microsoft. ECMAScript, yeah. But here's the deal with that. I think I mentioned this before in class, but every time you install Chrome, it has a little box that says, will you allow anonymous collection of data? If you don't, most people just like click things. Like, you don't read the EULA. If you want to sign away your life and your firstborn children, hell yeah. Go forward, right? Everyone except for Bilbo Baggins. He read the EULA. There's a tear to my every time I see this. Good for you, Bilbo Baggins. Anyway. What was I talking about? You had a question. Oh, yeah, okay. So you agree with the anonymous collection of data. Basically what happens is as you're clicking on web pages, let's say I propose a standard to the ECMAScript committee. Hey, I have this brand new, brilliant idea. Suppose that the ECMAScript committee actually believes me. Whatever strange reason, say, okay, fine, guy. Here's your proposed standard. We're going to run that. They run it in everyone's browser. Everyone who agreed to that anonymous collection of data. And if any web pages break, the standard automatically gets rejected. So the only way your proposed standard can pass is no one who is visiting a web page can have the web page break because of your proposed standard. So all the proposals are like hacks, trying to work around all the problems, but they don't fundamentally change stuff like this. Type of name is still equal to number. no matter what you want to do, no matter how nonsensical that is, right? There's an entire thing of that called WTF JavaScript, and it goes through all the bugs and the errors. None of them can ever be fixed because you can't break the web. And so if there's even one web page that depends upon this jankety broken behavior, you can't do anything about it. So what they've done instead is they created what's known as the shadow DOM, and that's this like separate entity from the regular DOM. It's called the light DOM. It exists in the background. And all that it does is it allows you to create your own web standard and then put it on your web page so that you can avoid all the problems inherited from 20 years of baggage. Yep. Da-da-da. If you ever want to see what the what it looks like, there is one person who proposed that. He's actually very famous. His name is Kyle Simpson. And Kyle Simpson actually proposed that as a standard. He said that there should be a particular cutoff date. Oops, didn't actually want to say that. And he said that on this cutoff date, it's called a break the web forward. He said we should write the way that we intend to fix everything. So there's the shadow DOM whenever it exists. Right? So I've got this input box called a number. And as far as HTML goes, got my pointer. I have the palette. So there's input type of number. And then when I look at that, there's input type of number. But then there's this thing called the shadow root. And the shadow root defines the div ID of text field container, pseudo WebKit, more stuff. All this does, all that extra fanciness, exists solely so I can do this, right? And every time I do that, it updates this hidden inner element right here. That's the shadow DOM. So basically, they have two standards, one of which is this standard light, like there's just an input box with type of number. Then there's a shadow DOM hidden underneath the surface. So this is the light DOM, this one little box, and then everything from here to here, that's all the hidden shadow DOM. So that's how they got around the problem. You can't break what exists, so we're going to invent a fictitious thing and then write code against the fictitious thing and then display it in your browser. Ha! You wouldn't have thought of that solution. Break it forward. So basically said, okay, there should be a certain date, like let's say 2022, something far in the future, but enough time, you know, not ridiculously far. It's like 2020 to 2200. Who knows what the web's going to look like then? But you know, in the year 2020, let's say, on like April 15th or something, all the standards that will fix JavaScript should be implemented, and they should have a list of like recommendations, like if you're doing this, do this instead, do this instead, like an automated tool. So anyone who's worried about their web page, just run the tool, and they'll say like, oh, you got this problem, this problem, this problem. Here's how you fix it. Boom. So then on that date, all this bad stuff in the web gets broken. Boom. But we have this glorious new internet that gets ushered in, and no one agrees with that idea. It's a 0% adoption rate. So this is what we get instead. And you guys will learn how to manipulate it and all the other fun stuff that goes with that. So congrats. Yes. You can get that as a t-shirt. Ruler with the shadow DOM. All right. So it's like null is null. That's true. I expect that. You should expect that. What if I want to find out if something is null? Well, in case when null is null, or whatever selector you would want to use, whatever it is you want to test out, then null is crept in. Notice I don't actually need an else statement, which may not be clear from early example, always throw the else in. But you can have just a when-then state. There is no else required, just like a if statement, you don't need an else. So it is optional. Now here's a question. Is null unknown? It is. It is the unknowable. If I try to cast null to a Boolean, I get a very interesting symbol. You get a dash right here. I talked about this earlier on, but this is what's known as indeterminate state. Right? So going back up, when I said is null unknown, I get a check mark right there. So that's a true statement. If I get a dash symbol, that means indeterminacy. It has no idea what that thing is. It's not true. It's not false. It exists in the void. Yeah, there'd be indeterminate state up until the time that they were actually observed, at which point the value would be calculated and derived. Well, Well, it becomes determinate at the point of observation. Stephen Hawking said he wants to reach for a shotgun anytime someone brings up that cat. I want to reach for a shotgun. He's an interesting guy in terms of psychology because he was a C- student. He was a partier. And he, like everyone had very low expectations of him until he had his he got drunk and he jumped off a cliff and broke his neck. He paralyzed. They became one of the smartest men alive, right? And so the idea there from psychology is like, well, all this junk that we run around in, the meat sack suit, right? That makes us dumb, right? And then you think about it, and you're like, well, I know a lot of big, strong guys. How many of them are quantum mathematicians? And I had a friend, he's a teacher, and he taught the really smart students, the geniuses. He's like, I always know mine because they're like 40 pounds lighter than every other kid out there. It's like their brain just suck up all the energy, and their bodies are just left to rot. So guys like Stephen Hawking sort of provide the case of maybe that's not so far off. Maybe your body is actually like taking away all this brain power. Anywho, just a tidbit of information. We've already seen this, but I'm coalescing a null value, so I get the alternative value. That's not too surprising. We also have built-in system functions. So what if I want to select the version, right? I want to know what version of Postgres is this. Well, then I get this entire huge amount of information. It says that I'm running Postgres 9.6.3 on an x86-64, so a 64-bit Apple Darwin system. Darwin is a BSD derivative. So Apple built their kernel on top of Linux, so they have great security and other great features. Compiled by the Apple LLVM, which is their C compiler. Yeah, so they invented their own system. And like all things Microsoft. Someone else already invented a system. We'll invent one later and it'll be better and everyone's going to love it. No one loves our system. Yeah. All right. So then we select the current database. We get world. This is probably one of the more useful ones because if you're not in the correct database, and you're trying to run commands against the database, it's going to keep throwing errors and you're going to be like, what? Why? Well, this can kind of save you. Another one that's very interesting to know is who is the current user? Who am I on the Linux terminal? In this case, I am me. So I might swallow, as would be expected. But each user has their own set of permissions. Your username on an Apple system generally has all the permissions in the world. Those of us who love Linux systems, you have to give yourself permissions. But on an Apple system, you just go ahead and say, okay, whoever you are, I'm going to assume that you, being the root user, want all the permissions in the world. So if I was working on a different database, for example, I can fully qualify the database that I'm using. So right now I've just been saying select city. And it knows that I'm inside the world database, and it guesses that I probably want something from the public table. So by default, if I just say select all from city, it just says, well, you're in the world database, the public is the default folder. Is there a city table? Sure enough, there is. So it says, okay, fine, you have to specify. But you can't fully qualify it. When is this useful? What if I have 2 or 3 different databases, and on some occasions I need to select something from a completely different database? How do I go about doing that? Well, I just write a fully qualified state, and then I'm able to select that other database and get information out of there. What if I want to know something about my database, and it's internal information? So you can already tell that the way that PyCharm is trying to help you is by showing you these internals. But if you're on the command line, you don't get any of this stuff. You don't get any fancy GUI. You just get terminal stuff. How do you know what's going on under the hood? Well, there is a special folder. I'll fly up all this. And it is called PG Catalog. And inside there, there's tables and there's views. And there's all sorts of other information. There's information underscore schema and Postgres Catalog. This is all the internal system information. So if you ever want to know something about your system's internals, what correlation is it using, and other such stuff, that's where it's all located at. So if I want to know about the tables where the schema name is public, then I run it. This can be different on mine than yours, but it sees I got city, country, country language, people 1, and food. And I just create a food table along with it. It also tells me things like, does it have indexes? In 3 of the cases, yes. In these 2 cases, it has no indexes. which is to say some sort of operation that runs after an insert, update, or delete. Yes, it does. Those are called sequences. And if you fly open here, that's what this is. And it has other triggers that do things like, for example, when I select a city, I have to have a country that matches it. So I cannot say insert a city where there is no country. They have to be matched. That's an index check or a trigger check. We've seen this one before, but select name, population from city, limit by 5. Wonderful. A more complicated query, excuse me. A more complicated query. Select name, round the GNP divided by the population times 1 million as an integer, which is accurate to the second decimal place, as GNP per person in dollars. This is, again, one of those times where you might use double-quoted strings because you want to convey all this information. But this is an alias or abstract table. And then 25, I just chose a random selector. It's going to appear in there. From country and limited to 5. Whenever I run this, squee, I get Aruba, and Anglia, and Albania. Guess which country has rich people in it and which one has poor people in it? You now know. So this is more of the advanced stuff. When you get into like the data mining and that sort of fields, and the data analytics-based ones, that's when you start running these sorts of, I hate how bright that is. You start running these sorts of analytic-based queries. You start doing grouping, you start doing joining and summing and all this other stuff. And because SQL is, again, overly verbose and kind of hard to read, Python just said, why don't we give you this for free? Why don't we write our own data libraries that are easy to read? Because the more of these things you start joining together, the more illegible it comes. But for very basic stuff, it's pretty good. Now we have to deal with another problem, which is we showed earlier that the count is an aggregate query. So normally in order to use it, we have to use a group by clause. So normally if I wanted to know how many IDs are there, I have to say select ID, count them, and then group by the ID. What if I don't want to do that? What if I'm stubborn? I want to know an aggregate query with a non-aggregate atomic query. Normally SQL says you can't do that. So there's a special function called over. And if I use the over command, then in this last column, it's going to tell me the total count is 4,079. And it just keeps repeating it over and over again. So this is sort of a way of getting around it. You have to be explicit about it. That's why it requires this command, because it's saying normally this would be a completely invalid result. But I'm telling it, you know what, I'm good with that. I can be invalid. Let me decide how this works. If we look at our information schema, this is, so you might be confused because there is a PG catalog and the information schema. And if you look at them, they're almost identical. In almost all respects and regards, they have the same information in them. So you would say for computer programmers, why would they deliberately write this redundant feature, right? Waste of space, waste of memory. The reason is that these systems existed long before there was a standard. In the standard, information schema is what's supposed to hold all information that is relative to the metadata of the system. However, PG catalog was around long before that. So, do you want to break everyone's code, or do you want to have duplicate information? I want duplicate information. So when I select all from the information.schema.columns, boop, I get this massive amount of information about every single cardinal, its character max length, its octet length, all the information in the world I could possibly ever want to know about my system internals. And this is cross-platform. So you can run this on MS SQL, MySQL, Oracle DBA. I think most of the major ones support this sort of syntax. And that's why they have two different things that do the same thing. This is all metadata, so like you should never try to insert or delete or do anything with this. Right? Yeah.
As long as I can't break it.
Yes. You cannot break it unless you decide that you want to go in there. I don't know if Postgres will even let you do that. I've never tried to deliberately break a system because I work in for companies. And generally, if you break things that companies own that they earn money off of, you don't stay at that job very long. So I get to deliberately try to break a secret database. However, for those of you who don't care about your computer, go ahead and have a little bit of fun and just see what you can get away with. Now we get to a little bit of internationalization. Select all from city where name equals San Jose. Notice that this San Jose is not that San Jose. Certain databases have this understanding of whether or not a value is capitalized or lowercase. Some schemas you can select will ignore case insensitive. So it doesn't matter if you spell it San Jose or San Jose, same difference to it. And it does reserve memory. So basically, if I can just say that uppercase h and lowercase h are the same value, then I have my memory usage. Yes? If you were to use the like selector, yes, but I'm using the where selector. Oh, excuse me, the equal selector. So I'd say where name like and then percent whatever, but that's really slow. So that's a terrible way to go about it. The way to get around that, though, is if you don't know whether you're using a case-sensitive or a case-insensitive system, is use the function lower. So select all from city where lower name equals San Jose. Now, if I run that query, it doesn't matter how it's spelled. Just to show you what would happen, this is using the default in Macs is to be case-sensitive. So if I did this, San Jose, without using the lower selector right there, I get back a null result. There's something called San Jose because it thinks San Jose lowercase and San Jose with capitalization, or title case as it's called, are different things. So this is your get out of jail free card. Or you could use upper, but it's far more common just to use lower than upper. Talked about how certain character sets don't support certain characters. So now we got a diacritical mark on the E. Right? So we have San Jose, and then we have San Jose. But anyway, what do we do with that? If we run this query, we now find out that there is a place in, where is this? Bermuda? I have no idea what country that is. But there is somewhere in the world where the San Jose is spelled with the diacritical E. It does not show up in the San Jose without the diacritical E remarks. This is why internationalization is important, is because data will go missing or it'll show up in the wrong place. If you use MySQL for this, in the old version of MySQL, it actually shows up as San J-O-Z-E or J-O-S-E question mark. That is the result you get back. San Ho. And it works with country codes. So country codes are all uppercase, but I can lowercase them like that. And you can see there that if I don't use the lower and I try to do that, it's not going to select it. Here's a selector where I'm limiting the result set back to only countries where there is more than 800,000 people. This was in 2001. 2017 population has grown by like 2 million, 2 trillion, 3 trillion, something like that. These numbers are grossly inadequate. But at the time it was recorded, these were accurate numbers. So out of all those cities, 300 or so of them actually have more than 800,000 people living with them. Now I have a, if you're curious about why this looks like this, it probably doesn't look that on your computer. That's because I have a special programmer font, and it makes symbols out of commonly used signs. So if I do that, it shows them as one big dash line, or like that, which is a lot smaller. So that way you can see at a glance whether you're using double equal or triple equal. It's called a Fira code font, if you want to go look that up. It's just how you show your code in the program. Right? You got to have some way of knowing that you're elite when you're a programmer. So like the more you customize your terminal and the more your Sublime text looks awesome, the more people know like that person there, worth paying attention to. Oh, I don't have it on this computer. Boo. Anyway, on my work computer, I installed there's a special font called Flow. And Flow font converts all of your text into lines, and it color codes them. And the reason why it's being used is because then you can let people look at the structure of your code without actually reading the code itself, so they don't get bogged in the details. But if like there's a really long line of code, they can go, why is that line so long? What are you trying to do there? You probably messed up somewhere. So it's designed as a way to avoid hurt feelings, because then, since you can't read the actual code, you don't know who wrote it. But it can show you the structure of it. Anyway, so here's one of a more complex queries. So this requires an AND condition. Both conditions have to be true for the entire statement to be true. So select name, population, life expectancy from country where the population is less than 50,000 and the life expectancy is greater than or equal to 75, which at the time this was made, that would be a fairly wealthy or well-off country. Because generally the poorer a country, the lower the life expectancy. So if you are looking for a vacation spot, you now have an excellent list of places where the standards are probably first world. Cayman Islands, for example, probably pretty. Monaco, Montserrat is supposed to be really nice. San Marino, oh yeah. The Virgin Islands, great places to go. Now so for a simple query like that, where there's just one AND statement, maybe not so bad. A little bit redundant, but not so bad. Things get a bit worse whenever we get to multiple selectors. So in the case of an OR, only one statement in an OR must be true for the entire statement to be true. This is Charles Bull, and you made a Boolean logic and Boolean mathematics. So you can go look that up if you're ever really bored. But basically, if you say if this, or this, or this, or this, only one thing has to be true.
One of the OR statements as well as what is after the AND, or
depends on how you group it. So that's going to go into an operator precedence. And so what you're going to see people do is this. They'll typically do this, and then they'll have an AND clause right here. And country code is not null, for example. Now, this is a degenerate check because it doesn't actually do anything. But this is the way people solve that, is because it says, okay, run all this, then after you do that, and this. If I were to remove this clause, this would be, say, or country code equals SMR and country code is not null. So it would be as if I did this. Oh, excuse me, like that? Yes. That's how the browser will interpret it if I don't explicitly use the parentheses. So yes, that's a logical error some people make, is they have long statements like this, and they don't use parentheses. Parentheses are free, so if you want to add them to make the code clear, go ahead and do so. But yes, otherwise, the OR and the AND have the same operator precedence, so it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, so you don't use parentheses. There's no, you just evaluate it like that. And we can see there, I got the country code LIE, I got the country code MCO, SHN, and SMR. So any of those OR conditions were true, go ahead and return the result. What you're going to see more typically is the end selector. 11:51, about time for a break. See some of y'all are fading. Jumping jacks, shoulder shrugs. Yeah.
that is how
In the military, it's called the side straddle hop. That's right. The jumping jack is the layman's way of saying it. The side straddle hop, that's a fancy way of saying it. All right, go on break. Come back at 2:05. We'll finish out our statements. Stretch, lunge. Anyone have a question? Anyone else? Mueller? Bueller? Yeah.
That's what they work up today.
So basically, it figures out while we yeah, because I made this up.
Yeah,
But I'm going to drop them later.
made it. So,
Anyone at all?
that, remember I was talking about that creative view off of select cases?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, but I want to ask you a question about why math comes out of zero. So, the creative
Let's see if we can really.
Yeah. That would be okay. Yeah, but I don't, why would they be so?
So if you want to get the way you have written, you want to do this entire thing. Basically, that's one of
They won't do it in any parentheses format. Maybe you go before there. This would be good. Isn't that weird? And so I think that what it's doing is for some reason reading the last one, having the American stuff, but it's separate. So, you know, because that's why you have to, there's no ways that you take that after.
So, I think this can look correct. This. Good one. Good. That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was just going to do the rest of the process on that's the secret. But I was just like, really confused about it. It's just random.
Yeah, that means this one.
Okay.
And it's not throwing errors and sort of makes it saying like error loss. Yeah, I don't know why. That's just sort of like,
Okay.
it's not messed up.
Good. That makes me feel better that it's not.
That's yeah, that is a weird behavior. That's like have you ever been on DB Overflow or DB Stack? So Stack Overflow is like composed of 160 different stacks of technology. One of them is called DB Exchange or something along those lines, and that's like all the database people. I would ask them that question because I guarantee you someone's going to write you a 10-page response detailing everything that happened in the chain of command. So that's a great question to ask
I
them.
have such a hard time understanding. A lot of the times, people will answer very simple questions with very complex answers, and it's always an interesting roll of the dice to see if you're going to get a good answer.
Welcome to programming, my son.
Bots.
Yes, I bought the army.
No lot about it.
Long and long ago. Now I am rotund and clearly not in my fighting weight. I fought at 175. I weigh like 240 right now. So definitely not getting in the ring anytime soon. Plus I'm old, you know. No one wants to see an arthritic old man. Come on, Sonny. But you know, I still got the one punch hit, right? So you want two punches out of me, that's, you know, now we're in trouble. With that one punch.
Balance. Is that where you get some of the push-ups?
Say again?
Where you get some of the push-ups while you're boxing?
Yeah, that's like the push-up and boxing, like, are just, they complement each other so well. Right? Like, that's a good beach muscle. You want to have a nice chest. So, like the power lifter guys, like they make fun of like guys who lift weights to look good. They're like, oh, that's just a beach muscle, like your biceps. Like, the only thing your biceps do is this, right? It flexes your wrist to your shoulder, and supination, turning your wrist up. And it's like, so they're like, it's not real muscle. Real muscle picks up heavy things and bends them. Right? That's real muscle. And it's like, yeah, but there's a thing called women. And women like guys who look like bodybuilders, not guys who look like powerlifters. Right? They don't like usually big, bulky, fat guys. It's just not as attractive to them. They're like guys who look like Zac Efron. Oh. I see your Tinder game is better than mine. Yeah. Franco, he's in The Running Man. Yes. Yeah, he's the big guy who's like the alternative Schwarzenegger. So like when Schwarzenegger gets kicked off and he gets put in the Running Man competition, there's the other bodyguard who's just like standing around.
That's right.
And that's him because he has that super thick accent because he has a line at the final end of the movie that like no one can understand. It's like, wow, Arnold has a friend that speaks English worse than he does.
That's why he keeps him around. He's like a friend of that.
Yeah. Do you think I have bad English? You talk. Well played, sir. That's how we bonded, I get Stallone, he just talk like this. Get Schwarzenegger, he talk like this. Yeah, that's a great way to go. It's the ugly friend thing, right? Supposedly, they had an interview with Stallone's daughters, and they're all like violinists, and, like, very classically well-trained women. And they said that like Stallone got ripped upon. So the reason why he speaks so weird is that a doctor messed up a surgery whenever he was a baby, and like nicked his ear and his vocal cords. So that's why his face kind of like has sloped over here. That's why he can't talk right, because like he's missing like half the muscles to make it actually work right. So yeah. Laughed at those jokes now, right? Yeah. Oh, didn't know. You look at his bank account and you're like, you know what? Yeah, exactly. I make fun of him all I want, but he's driving much nicer vehicles than I am. So, but anyway, they had an interview with them. They talked about like having their dad. It was like going through like he was made fun of so much that like he made them take enunciation lessons like every single day until they were like in their 20s, and they're like, "Dad, we speak English just fine." He's like, "Whoa." So, yep. So you got that overcompensation thing. But yeah, it's also why he like made them take like classical languages and learn like violin and other stuff like that, is because like he's a guy with no education basically, so he wanted to have the opposite. Interesting, because sometimes people who do that, like his daughters are all like, they seem really nice. Listen to them speak. There's other people who try to compensate for their kids, and they sound horrible. Donald Trump Jr. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but I am saying that when you listen and talk, like your skin runs away. But it's all interesting, like how people try to compensate for their kid, and like the results of that experiment so far really well. And you're like, oh, that's wow, really good job, Stallone. And the other one's like, oh no.
The Olsen twins, terrible. Their younger sister. Yeah, I know there's a younger Olsen sister. Have fun.
The Olsen twins now, they work in fashion.
Yeah.
They said that Hollywood was toxic, and so like when they were asked to go redo the Full House, the Fuller House, they deliberately turned it down and said, no, we want out of Hollywood. Place. And that does make sense, because like I've read enough like interviews with people who work in Hollywood. It's like, yeah, the people that work there are complete scum. So.
There's a wonderful work on the movie, that sitcom. One of the things works on that. I don't know if they've re-updated that. It was kind of about losing sister, and sister very rich, but his sister and husband are struggling. It's a TV show.
I've heard of this.
This is the Irish family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Netflix Q is getting up to.
I don't know. I almost like the first time. Yeah. She comes in. She has to basically watch the kids while they're in prison.
Oh.
Oh, that's, oh, all right. All right.
So there, one of them is working back in Hollywood.
Okay. Yeah, one of them may have made him as the demons of the past. It's the one that had anorexia really bad. So like the two twins, one of them looked okay, and the other one looked like skin and bones, like death. Was really tough. Maybe the other one's like, you know what? I'll forget. I'll do it.
My retirement plan was to marry one Olsen twin, but Olsen take half her money. Marry her sister, but Olsen take half her money. So by the time I was done, I would be as rich as one of them was before they met. Solid retirement plan.
You're
I wasn't pretty enough. Okay, I got 40 long.
my Tinder game is not what I thought it was. Quick, film me inside of a forest. I love nature. All right, so we have select all from country language where country code equals USA and language equals Spanish. Micro machines. Anyway, so we run this query. Oop, and we find out that this is, well, this is like really what tells you this is an old database. This says 7.5% of the speakers in America speak Spanish. And it's like, no. That can't even be remotely close. It's probably closer to 15, 70% right now, would be my shorthand guess. So if you want to join them together, you use what's known as a tuple, or a row, or a vector, or a set. Because being a programmer means you have to have numerous complicated ways of saying the same thing. The correct definition, as far as most programming languages are concerned, of a tuple is, oops, let me comment that out. The set of parentheses with at least one comma in them. The reason why the comma is important is that if you don't have a comma, you just have the grouping operator. And you can put as many grouping operators as you want around something. Parentheses free. So you can add 10 million of them. But as soon as you put a comma, you're saying, no, I have 2 items inside of this list. That now becomes a tuple. Inside of Python, you can do something like this, and the first result of the tuple will be null. The second result will be the value of 0 inside that tuple. So if you want to create an empty tuple, that's how you do it. Inside of SQL, which is based upon set theory and set mathematics, which is based upon tuples and sets. Set mathematics is set. It's all based upon this. The way you do the same equivalent as select all from country language where with country code and equals USA and language equals Spanish is you group your 2 where selectors inside the tuple. You set it equal to another tuple. So your first tuple and your second tuple. And you get the exact same result. So it's a lot simpler. Now your question about the or and how does it understand it, this is pretty much the example of that. So you use a set of parentheses to wrap around how you want this logically to be related. So it's saying if this condition from start to finish is true, or this condition from start to finish is true, then return me that result set.
You could basically fill that up anyway, logically.
Yes. So as long as you keep switching parentheses around, that'll keep different results. So 23.4% of Canadians speak French, and 7.5% of Americans speak Spanish at the time of this database. So how do I tupleize this? How do I make this smaller? Well, I use the in selector and mix it into an or, and then I use 2 sets of tuples. This is the equivalent of and. USA and language equals Spanish, country language equals Canada, and language equals French. This is your shorthand version of that. And you will see the exact same result. Now, how do I order results? Right now, I've been relying mostly upon the operating system or SQL system really, to order my results. What if I want to be explicit? I don't just want random things to appear. I want them to appear in a particular order. So here I'm selecting all from the city where the country code equals PRT, ordered by the name. We should see here the A, B, C, L, P, alphabetical order. By default, the ascending order is assumed. So it's going to start with the first result and go to the last result. If you want descending order, then you have to specifically say DESC, descending. So I'll do the good old copy pasta and do this, run it again. Now you can see that the first result is the P, then the L, then the C, D, A. So what they're ordering.
You write your own formula inside of that order by whatever creative.
No, that was specifically, it's actually addressed in Python video. It was posted up under random or wherever that was posted up. He talks about this. And he says basically that SQL user was doing this key value ordering. So you just give it some key and then you give it a very short list of things. And that enables you to pretty much get anything you want out of it. And he's saying that from a memory efficiency standpoint, if you create your own function with sorting in it, it's usually much less efficient than this sort of algorithm because that was heavily optimized and it's running at the compiler level. If you write your own one, it's running at the interpreter level, which thing is compiled into machine code. So basically the point of his talk is he said never write your own sorting algorithm because you can usually use a key value one that has been pre-generated by someone else. And SQL took the strong stance of like, nope, one result. Now what you can do if you really want to get creative is you can use the select statement right around there. You can select something and then order it by what you selected as your second clause. That is sort of like your fun way of doing it. And you can write a custom function inside of here, which acts as selector. You then say select this thing and then use that to order by. So you create your own basic keys. You create your own keys. It doesn't change how it sorts it. It still uses a key system, but you create the key on the fly. That is your one way you can get around that. We did that. Yes, you can do it with single column. If you do multiple columns, you have to use commas and stuff. You can't have one. You can't have an indeterminate result set. So you can't say order by this, that. It must be this, and then this thing after that. So it's the first thing, the second thing, the third, and so on. So we use that in our DNS system. So in DNS, like you're used to seeing websites look like, www.google.com. In DNS, this looks like .com, .google, .ww. DNS is what's known as a reverse tree lookup. So that little dot there, which is normally invisible, that is the root of the DNS system. That says go to ICANN, the very top, the one that was invented by departments. Start there, then look for the .com namespace. So that tells you where to go to next. So then it looks for anything that is assigned .com namespace. Then it says in there, do you know about a Google? Is there a Google in there? So yeah, I know about the Google. Then it's going to say, okay, now that you know about the Google, do you know anything about www? It says, yeah, I know about www. You try to select something that doesn't exist, like smc google.com, so say, I don't know what that is. So that's how it works. So in our order by clause, we had a special function that would reverse that. So we could turn that into this. So that way you could see how DNS would show you the results set, because no IP is a DNS company. So yes, on occasion you do write that sort of stuff. Pretty rare though. And it's going to be something like DNS or some other exceptional condition. So you can order by district. If you choose to use a multi-order by, the choice first, which is district, applies. Then the name applies. So district is Braga. So here's where you're going to see it. So we said sort by district, BCLP, makes sense. Then we got two L's, exact same ordering. So then whenever we switch to the name over here, the first one is an A, the second one is an L. By thing one, and whenever there's two things with the same district, then apply the name selector. If you kept going on like that, it would keep going. Postgres is pretty nice in that it does not require that the thing you select and the thing you order by be included. Some database systems, if you're going to use a order by district, you must also have a select district in there. Postgres says, no, it's cool. MySQL is the same. There's our descending selector. We've already seen that, though. This one's a little more fun. This is about as close as you can get to a custom selector. So it's saying select name from country, order by case. When the code is USA, then 1. So the USA is always going to be the first result set no matter what. Everything else becomes a 2. Then once it has that, it's going to order it by the name select. So USA is always number 1, right? And then everything else after that is number 2. So start with the United States, and then Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, because those are ordered by. Yes, because probably most of your customers are going to live in like 2 countries, usually just one USA. But everything after that is like that's 1% of your customer base. Right? Yeah, search like a peasant. But I always hate it whenever I visit a website and they don't do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you have to like,
You.
yeah,
You're a boy.
no.
Is there a way to use that Postgres that you could just like you can do with other things?
See that flag wave?
Well, create your own shadow DOM element, and then always make it, call it input type equals USA, and then always make sure that it's always USA. And then you can add the audio elements from there, and that'll play not the song you're thinking of, but no, Hulk Hogan's theme song, I Am a Real American. Who remembers that song? My God.
I remember Hulk Hogan.
Say your prayers, eat your vitamins. Oh, no.
I ate too many Slim Jims.
Have you ever heard his rap album? Homework. Just go ahead and Google that. Because Macho Man Randy Savage and rap, you're just like, I see that. That just goes together so well. And it sounds, whatever you're hearing in your head, that's what you're going to hear, right? So, what do they call that? The meta text and the text match perfectly. Whatever's going on in your head is going to match exactly what that sounds like.
Nowadays, when I read tech tutorials, I hear the voices from the year. Just to be honest about it, right? When it came up.
I should have talked like the Macho Man the entire time. Doing Postgres. Oh, yeah. Sequel with the Macho Man.
I never let someone work with you down.
I was in Spider-Man. So, that's part of a rap song. He has a rap song that disses Hulk Hogan. And basically he's like, what movies were you in? You were in Mr. Nan. I was in Spider-Man. And you're like, this is a rap. This is real life. Pinch me. Anyway, so now we have a more complicated example, but it's still the same idea. All right, we're going to select name from country order by case code. When USA, then 1. When Canada, then 2. Then Mexico, then 3. Else 4. So everyone who's not USA, Canada, or Mexico, part of North America, they're going to be grouped together. So when I run that statement, so we can see I got USA, Canada, Mexico, and then since all these are a 4, they all get grouped together. So the first 3, I'm allowing them to be selected first. We've seen the limiter before, but it just says don't show me everything because there's thousands of results in the city, 3,000 or whatever it is. What if I want to limit my query, but I also don't want to retrieve a certain number of values? For that, we use the offset keyword. The offset keyword says, don't give me the first 5 results and limit it to fit 20. So instead of seeing, we'll normally see like so whenever I run that one, it's ordering it by population, but the first 5 are removed. So if I run that again, removing the offset, so here notice it's Karachi as my first result. Here I get Mumbai. And you can see that number 6 is Karachi right there. Results get ignored, skipped over. Where do you see this all the time? Google.com, type in a search result, first 20, second, third, fourth. That's what this is. It's used for pagination all the time because you want to limit a result. You wouldn't want Google to give you the 1 billion results on one page because it would just spend forever. So this is how you limit those queries. Da-da-da. They give a tracker, so like Google obfuscates it, but most like simple web pages, like you'll just see it in the query. It'll be like QL equals 20. It'll be L equals 40. So it's literally just sending that value directly to the database. But yeah, so it basically just, so with the with rollup that we saw before, you can then use that as a separate selector and say, okay, keep that, and then we'll keep track of it. So if you read the documentation on SQL, you'll know that it says you can either do select all or select distinct. Select all is the default. And when we run that, we selected all the continents from the country. There's only 7 continents, so what should I expect to get is 7 results back. Instead, though, I get every single result back, even all the duplicates. So what if I want to get a non-duplicate set? Well, for that, I have the distinct keyword. When you throw in the distinct keyword, now I only get these 7. $2.17, I guess it looks like a lot of y'all want another break. So go ahead, take a 10-minute break. You did, but guess what? Apparently, you guys don't know how to break properly.
What's that thing you showed us last week where it goes like this? The technology thing, the adoption?
The Gardner Hype curve.
Yeah, that's very similar to the human caffeine curve.
I reach peak caffeine, then it dies down, and then...
Clearly 213 was the bottom of that.
I'll get a dietitian in here and be like, how much caffeine per hour do they need to consume to keep that caffeine curve at a nice optimal condition?
I think it,
Yeah, it's very relative.
Yeah.
You can get your take that about a dozen, 20 folks a day.
It's like 1 pound of fat and sugar.
You just cut.
that's
68 chord lines.
that's large that turned into bad.
Unfortunately, I got a previously assistant. No, this was 2008.
Well, yeah, Coke is like the ultimate process thing, right? Like, there's not a single, like, except for the water, maybe. There's not a single natural ingredient in there, and even that water is sketchy. Yeah. Well, I mean, the flip side of that is that your stomach lining, your stomach acid, is like one of the most, well, it's one of the most corrosive materials in the world. So it's like, compared to Coke, you know,
Like having gas and fire.
yeah. Bring it on. I can take it.
So it's not like shades on. I don't know.
I'm not letting anything alone. I need to go for a couple hours. Yeah, I tried so many like other duties, but I mean, I like the critique they get back. I don't want more.
Samsung.
I want
Where'd you get a Samsung? Oh, nice. Oh, that's cool. Actually, yeah, we both got 10 days before the meeting.
vendors for life. I'm very particular about this.
That's how you put people's eyes out.
Yeah, you were typing.
That's the matrix. Does anybody else see that? You ever watch Aussie Man Reviews? Aussie Man Reviews. I hit that up.
assume Aussie is AUSSI.
No, OZZY. Real Aussie. But he is Australian, so I think it is a play on Aussie versus Aussie. But he does commentary on different like viral videos. But he has one where he comments on a fight, and it's like a fat guy fighting a small guy, and he's like, and like the fat guy suddenly just starts dodging all the small guy's punches, and he's like, "Oh my God, we've entered the matrix. The referee has stopped the fight. He doesn't know what's going on. He could be the chosen one." So he cusses quite profanely, so can't listen to it in like public settings. But put your headphones on. Really fun stuff. Not while I'm teaching. Can't take you guys anywhere.
You may, it may be because of the firewall.
Forbidden.
But you're gonna have to actually tell that to it in the console. So if you open up their prompter, tell them
Now you're sounding like some East Ukrainian sketchy stuff, right? First, you tell them into our server. Then you type in SHCP, your hard drive, to our server. It's very good. No. We will lie on television when asked. Discuss adoption. Absolutely, I believe this. I mean, you should lie better. You know, don't insult me like that. Oh yeah, someone's got the Fury Code stuff up. Banda is listening to you. Yes, it is. You installed it. Why do you think you installed it? Because it wants to know who you are. It's going to sell your advertising stuff, your data to advertisers. Yeah, that's sort of like if you don't pay for a product, then you're the product, basically. It's the Silicon Valley mantra. Yep. All your personal information belongs to us. Yeah. Yeah. Trust us. Just like you trust our server, yes? All right. So we're looking at some of those queries where we're not using distinct. When does this really show up, and when does it like really give you nonsensical data? What if I say select count continent from country? All right. Well, there's 7 continents, so obviously 239 is the correct result. The reason why is because I didn't tell it to make sure these were distinct, so it's just saying, well, there's 239 results in the column of continent. If, however, I throw in that distinct keyword, And you can throw, the count allows you to use selectors, so you can narrow that down. Now I get, select count all. That gives me 239, as we discussed. That means just the number of rows in general. It doesn't mean there actually has to be anything in that row. So if I say select count capital from country, I should get 232, and that's because some of those minor islands, some of those things like Antarctica, they don't have a capital. I don't think Antarctica has a capital. I assume not. I can combine the aggregate selector with another selector, so I can say select count from country where the continent equals Asia, and that'll tell me there are 51 with a hyphen countries inside of Asia. Again, this is 2001, so this may not be right because countries break apart or join together or other such things. There's also the sum selector. You're going to be using stuff like this in your lessons. So in the Postgres database thing, it's going to be these things right here, sum, average, and they're going to be part of what you're going to do. And round. I'm sure you can, right? The round thing. Round. So select count all, sum the population, and then average the population from country where the continent equals Africa. Or excuse me, Asia. So we have 51 countries there. If we add up everyone who's in there, we have 3.7 billion people, and the average per country is around 72 million. So that's one, about 3.7 billion. Oh yeah, Russia and so you're actually getting into the problem with no one in there. So yeah, that's between the average and the mean, right? Because like Bill Gates walks to a coffee shop, the average wealth of that coffee shop, everyone's a multimillionaire. However, when you look at the median wealth there, you have one huge outlier and then a bunch of people who are in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. Okay. So yes, that's the thing. So you can notice that this average command gives me this funky remainder. Let me pull that over, right? So I got dot blah, 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 this huge precision float number. And that's pretty ugly. So to get rid of that, that is our friend the round command. So if I run that, it removes everything. If I want to, did I do it? No. If I want to say round to a certain decimal, assuming I don't mess this up, I'm now saying that I want to round out to 2 decimal places. So I've got 8, 9, however much the precision is. You can actually look inside the information scheme and it'll tell you what the precision is. But now I'm saying, no, I just want 2 places because that's more than precise enough. Now, generally when it comes to populations, you don't do that. And the reason why is because the idea of 0.75 people hanging around in a country is kind of strange. Right? Who is this 3/4 person? Is it Peter Dinklage? Are you the 3/4 person?
There's a complaint.
You're right. Sorry, Peter Dinklage. Someone who's much richer than me, more successful. So, I'm sure his feels are perfectly fine. He actually has a really good college commencement speech. So if you ever have the time, go watch Peter Dinklage college commencement speech, where he talks about like his life prior to becoming an actor. He spent 10 years working at a data center. He hated every day of his life and lived in a crappy little apartment. So eventually he said, you know what? I'm going to go big or go home. I'm going to actually do my live stream becoming an actor. So a really nice talk. All right. Well, so this is one of those non-aggregated values don't work. So if I was going to do something like this, you can see the error. It's saying column country name must appear in the group by clause. So I'm trying to select it, but I didn't use it in a group by. Postgres tries to protect you from these sorts of mistakes because this would be a nonsensical query if I ran it. Country. And here we go. And it gives me the maximum population from these different areas. In this case, not a very useful command because I'm getting it from the country, but if I was to do it by city country, then I could see which city had the highest population amount. In order to do these sub-aggregation queries, as they're called, because we love fancy names, that just basically means I have condition A and condition B. How do I do that? I have to specify how I want to group them by. So in this one, I'm saying, give me the continent's name, sum up the entire population of each continent, so all those different countries, sum up that. Then group it by the continent. This will tell me per continent how many people are on there. And as you can see, yes, Asia is heavily skewed towards how to use people. By a pretty long shot. And you can use a group by and order by, and you'll get a result that looks like this. So this is grouping them both by continent and region. Notice this one only grouped by continent, so it has two sets of aggregation. So it's going to create all the continents, aggregate them by the region and population per region. Oh yeah, so there's a very interesting result that you're getting here. Oops. Oh no. Here we go. Run that again. Okay. So notice I'm saying order by the, oops, this one. Run that. There we go. So I'm saying order it by the continent. So what I'm expecting to see, Asia, Europe, but then notice that North America comes before Africa. You should hopefully say, well, that's a really weird result set that I just got there. Europe, North America, Africa, that does not seem correct. Why am I getting that result? Well, that is because when you look at these object types in the little flyout menu under public, you'll see there's one called country continent. It's creating what's known as an enum. An enum is a data type that starts at 0, 1, 2, 3. So 1 is Asia, 2 is Europe, 3 is North America, 4 is Africa. When you look at the sorted set, 1 is Asia, 2 is Europe, 3 is North Africa, Africa, so forth. So because of that data restriction, what it does there is it says if you don't enter Asia, North America, Europe, if it's not one of those values, it will not let you insert that table. So I cannot make up a country, continent name, rather, excuse me. That's what the enum data type is for. But it leads to this weird result here where it's ordering them by that enum, not by the character. The fix is pretty simple. You just simply explicitly cast it as a character. Whenever I do this, I get Africa, Asia, Antarctica, Europe, so forth and so on, grouped in a way that I would expect. And I can use multiple order by clauses. And then you'll see that it sorts them each numerically based upon the continent. And then if there are numerous versions, East Africa comes before Western Africa, but Africa comes before Asia. So this should probably fail. Oh, nope, as I was. Oh, it's because I have the group bys. Excuse me. So select continent name, sum the population is total pop from continent, and then group them up. We get a result that looks like this. We've seen this, but if you want to count distinct cities, you can do that. So of the 3,000 cities that are listed, a lot of them are actually duplicates of each other. You know, a lot of cities with the exact same name because people are not that creative. And you can tell that because programmers name variables foo and bar and baz all the time. So creativity, not something we're good at. Which of course brings me to the greatest book ever written. Oops, not you. Amazon, there we go. So there is a book in existence called 1,000,000 Random Digits with 100,000 Normal Deviations. That's right. Why does this book exist? You might ask yourself. The answer is that humans are bad at coming up with randomness. We actually generate the same numbers, the same sequences, same ideas over and over again. If you ever go see a type of magician called a mentalist, this is what they do. They know that people tend to use the exact same answers. And they know how to lead you to making the exact same answers. So because of that, because humans are so terrible at this, there used to be books that did nothing but give you random characters, random names, random numbers, etc. Of course, since we have computers now, we have something that's a little bit better at generating randomness. But even computers kind of suck at it. The reason why is they have a formula. They run the same formulas all the time. Right? It doesn't actually vary. So hackers used to be able to know what your random number was. These use to compromise security systems. So now I have what is known as true randomness. Mac has it. It's available on Linux. But it's called dev urandom. Echo permission. I'd have to use here's a little result about that, but the old random was just called dev random. And so that was your computer's random generator, but it wasn't actually random. It was perfectly mathematically precise. Urandom said, oh crap, we need randomness. How do we get randomness? Where do you get entropy from? Can anyone give me entropy? There's a couple ways to get entropy, one of which is through humans. So if you've ever used Mega, which is one of those file upload servers that's run by Kim.com, is another one of Silicon Valley shady characters. If you upload a file, it'll say, move your mouse around. The reason why is the movements of your mouse are completely random, right? It's pure chaos. So you become the chaos generation machine for the entropy calculation. If you don't move your mouse around at all, you have a completely insecure cryptographic signature because the formula is very well known. So if you don't move your mouse, no entropy. The other way to do it, though, is my computer's like whirring up really hot right now because I'm streaming this video. And so another way to get randomness is to say, well, base it upon CPU load, memory usage, heat of the processors. So it just looks all inside the computer's internals trying to find something that's actually random and then using that. That's dev urandom. And you can generally tell how old something is by how short the name is. Because when they come up with a new name, they just tack on stuff like that, right? You have something called range as an operator in Python. How do you make a new operator? You call it xrange, right? So you just keep adding on characters. PHP is probably the most ridiculous of this because it has some names that are just super long. And then there's a really short version that was written in 1997. And so as it's grown over the years, it just gets these new characters added onto it. We can also use the an aggregate count operator. We can also, whenever we group by district, we use a having to select something from that group by clause. So we selected a district, then we counted out the cities as city count. Now we want to know which of these districts has more than 30 cities in it. And you can see there are 12 districts which actually have more than 30 cities inside of it. So that's using both a group by selector and then using an aggregate having clause. That's what having does. It allows you to sub-aggregate your selector. If you try to use where there, for example, it wouldn't work correctly. And of course, you can use a having along with an order by. So now to the problem of how do I know what the total is, right? So I could manually add those up, but probably whenever I'm running these queries in a database system, I'm not going to loop through all this stored in some temporary variable and then output it to the screen. You could do that, but that's kind of messy. Fortunately, there is a command called rollup, and rollup will do this for you. But there is a little bit of messiness in there. So here I'm saying select the continent, add up everyone who's in that continent as the total population from the country, then group by roll up the continent. So I want to know how many people are there per continent. Well, you can see that it now gives me 8 results. The 8th result with the name of null down here, that is the total population as of 2001, which is 6 billion or so. What is the number? Yeah, 6 trillion, excuse me. Now it's like 7.2 trillion, something a lot higher than that. You can see the 8th is. But that's what rollup does. It says, take all the results that I've grouped by together, and then add them all up into one extra column. The problem is you get this really messy null kind of like hanging around there. That's really ugly. And if I do the same thing with country and region, Now it's grouping them both by the country and by the region. And the results of that, how many people live in Asia, grand total, 3,700,000, whatever that number is. Without commas, I can't do math, I'm sorry. I'm human, forgive me. Europe is around 730 billion, so forth and so on. So I get that messy null there. So how do I remove that messy null? Well, we go back to the beginning. We talked about the coalesce operator, right? And the coalesce operator says, if something is null, then use the second value instead of the first value. Now I'm saying select continent as continent name, coalesce the region, then use the repeat, which just repeats something, 25 times, so dash dash 25 times, that's region name. Sum up the population is total population from the country, and then group it by country by region. When I run that query, now where we had null, you can see that we got this much nicer little dash line. So if I wanted to make sure that I knew that there was some value as the like, this is the result of the sum calculation, that would be it. I could put whatever it is I want here using the coalesce. And here I use this. If you run that in the terminal, it looks really nice. Run it from here, this already looks pretty nice. So on this one, there's alter type country continent. That's this over here we looked at. Add a value of unknown. The reason why I have to do this is because remember what the enum is there for. The enum prevents you from entering in a value that is not part of the enum. So if I tried running this query right here before I did this, what? I must have already run that. Hold. That should fail, and the only reason why it wouldn't fail is if I already have this generated. Let's find out if I've already run this. I did. So yes, if you ran this, it will fail. This little select enum range tells me that I already added this at some point in the past. So normally if you try to coalesce an enum to an unknown value, it'll fail. So you have to alter the type of country continent by adding the value of unknown to it. Once you do that, you can then coalesce that value. You can use it. One of the nice things that usually with this editor, it stores things beyond the point where you would want them to. It's only going to let me drop it. It sometimes has the ability to modify things, which works pretty sweet whenever you can actually get it to do it. But anyway, I need to add the command that's going to look like alter type, country, continent, remove value, unknown. I don't think that's actually the correct way to do it. It says use drop. Yeah, I'd have to go through there and actually, go read the documentation on how to do that. But anyway, it's got this unknown value working around. This select enum range tells me what the enums listed are. So for some reason, this has been cached, even though it shouldn't still be cached. That's annoying. But it does allow me to use the select coalesce with unknown. And that allows me to see this unknown value right here is the result of every single country's population summed up as one. Both the continent and the region. So it aggregates each of these different clauses. This is the entire continent, and then these are the individual regions. If you're on a Windows, you're going to get a totally different result than those of you who are on a Mac whenever you run this command. So select all from PG collation. What does this mean? This is every single character set that your operating system knows about. Any Windows people who's running this command? Are able to run this command? What do you get? Select all from PG collation. It should be like 3 results. It would be like C. Yep. So the one that it uses is what it calls C, which is an incredibly well-named name, which is one of those things as a developer you have to be very careful about is what you name things. That means your system gets to choose what collation it is. You've completely said, not me, don't ask me to be responsible for this. The operating system is entirely 100% responsible for it. As you can see, if you run this on Linux, you're going to get a much different result set than this. The reason why is Linux, you have to install each of these different things individually. So on Linux, you install each collation type depending upon what countries you want to support. There is a package to download them all, but it's really huge because you can imagine there's a lot of different languages. And each of these things has a different meaning, which I commented them and put them up what it means. So collate means the string sort order. So if I say order by, how does it know what order by means? Does it mean case sensitive, case insensitive? How do I deal with the diacritical E? Is that before or after the regular E? That's what the LC collate is. The C type is the character classification. What is a letter? What is uppercase equivalent? What that does is that if I say lower, which you saw before where I say lower name, what is a lowercase version of a name? How does it know that? That is the C type. It tells it how to do that. There is an error you can run into with emojis, which basically if you try to uppercase them, then it doesn't know how to do that, so it'll wrap around sometimes. And the weird emoji. There is, I think they're called kaiwai emojis. Kaiwaijis. Basically, they're Japanese-based emojis. And they're like the most adorable thing ever. So I use them now for everything. But yes, I know, minus 10 man points. But I use the box, so plus 1,000 man points. Right, that's how math works, you know, it's just math. LC messages, the language of messages, what does that mean? Like you get these error messages, they're gonna return to the user. What should that look like? What language should that be? LC monetary, well, how do you deal with monetary? Some languages use commas instead of dots. And this has caused all sorts of errors in one of the systems that I used to work on because commas normally mean a separated list. And most computers, like they'll accept floating points, so 2.00 is fine. 2.00 has a completely different meaning. So all of a sudden, like the system would break when you switch to German. The Deutsch. And it was like, why is that happening? The reason why is they use comma. Which is clearly why they are unfit to leave the European Union. LC numeric, how do I format numbers? Decimal places, so forth and so on. And dates and times, how do I handle that? Those are all your options. If you use the C option, you're just telling it whatever the system says, man, that's cool with me. 249, you got 10 minutes. Y'all can wait. If you get curious about what this stuff is, you can use the show command and run through it. I think anyone who's on a Mac, you're going to get the same results that I get. I don't know if Windows people are going to get the same result. You might get C instead of this. Because we're using the UTF-8 standard, the UTF-8 standard, what it did was it said, okay, we're going to have one character set for languages. That was the UTF-8 initiative. It turns out to work out really, really well. So trying to use a collation of French versus E and US, you're not actually going to see a difference. You're still going to get Bernard, Boris, Beatrice, Bernice. Windows users, I don't know what you'll get if you run these two select statements. One of which collates it as French-French, and the other one as CS. I think that's simple Chinese name. I don't know. I just selected a random value whenever I ran this command. To create a table, the actual syntax is create table people 1. Then you specify the identifiers. We went over this before. The easier way to do it, if you're going to be lazy about it, is go to a new, go to table, and then it allows you to click the plus icon and just create tables. And because it's an IDE, it allows you to know exactly what the different options are that are available to you. You can see there's a lot of them. Postgres has a ton of different commands there. In general, though, you're going to be limited to like 5 or 6. You're going to use serial, floating point, precision, double precision, small length characters. Pretty small lengths you're actually going to use. Postgres, as you can see here, does allow you to invent your own data types. So if you are so adventurous, you can randomly make up data types. Be bold. Don't let anyone tell you what you can do. As the great philosopher Who's the kid from Transformers 1? Shia LaBeouf? The great philosopher Shia LaBeouf said, don't let your dreams be dreams. Just do it. And that is how you should treat your databases. Now, one thing about databases is that they don't really have comments inside of the database the way that code has comments, right? So there's a special thing called comment. And you say comment on table, and you say is, and you say what it is that it is. But you have to first create that table. I think I already created it. Sure enough, I did. I can now add a comment on it. And I have to use this incredibly obscure syntax called select object description, object identifier, all from PG underscore class where rel kind equals R. I have no idea, literally, what any of that means, by the way. That is just in the instructions for how you do this. So here you go. This gives you all the different things like rel tuples and rel all visible, all the internal data information that you could ever want on this. That's not too useful. Instead, what we really want is this command, which is select object description OID from PG class where rel name equals 1. That says this is going to table. So above that, I wrote out my comment, and then scrolling down here, I have my comment available. If I create another table called people6, it has an ID. Small serial means that the numbers are always unsigned integers, which means 1, 2, 3, 4. Signed is a minus sign, so it means minus or plus. Small serial means the thing goes up to 256 integers. Any more than that, it'll fail, but that's because it's a demo table. And then I have a name called varchar. The small serial is the primary key and it cannot be null. Then I insert the people, name, values of Ann, Andy, Betty, and Bob. You can see I'm very creative with my names. Then I select all from people6. Even though I did not specify an ID inside of this, small serial with primary key means increment it by 1 each time it runs. That is held inside of sequences. You'll see this people6 underscore ID underscore sequence. That holds what number or position the insert statement is at whenever you auto increment. So what if I want to change this? Well, then I can use alter sequence people6 underscore ID underscore sequence. We start with 105. So it's going to go down here. It's going to change that value from where it is right now, which is at 5, and it's going to make it into 105. So I ran it. There's no obvious sign that that worked. But if I do the select all, everything looks the same until I rerun that command. So I'm going to reinsert the names again. And then I'm going to do a select all. Notice now, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 105, 106, 107, 108. And the reason why is because I restarted with 105. So I've altered the sequence. One common problem with Postgres is that your sequence will get out of alignment. And this is, if you ever have to do this, that's how you realign. Usually that's because there's kind of a weird thing inside of Postgres, or at least a bug I've run into in production, where if you insert something and it fails, Postgres still goes ahead and auto-increments the sequence. That's kind of a bad thing from a computer science standpoint, because then you end up with what's called an unbalanced B tree. The more unbalanced your B tree is, the slower your system's going to perform. If you want to drop a table, it's pretty simple. So if I say drop table people6, click that, it's now gone. Drop table people1, that's now gone. With that, should be right on the dot for the end of the official class. So that is a ton of different SQL statements to group by, so roll-ups. The averaging and the columns, you're not going to remember them in one go. Hence the reason why I distributed this. So that way you can rerun these commands and make sure you understand how they actually work. You can also go to the documentation that says how group by works, is how having works. You're going to have to do that for the assignment. Use these sorts of subselectors and aggregate subqueries. So with that, you are now free to leave. So you don't remember the